Did you know that the most dangerous moment of your day might be the very first minute after you wake up? Yes, really. Every morning, millions of seniors over 60 open their eyes, sit up, and begin their day without realizing they're making a silent mistake that could triple their stroke risk. It's not something dramatic. In fact, it's usually something we've done for decades without a second thought. But as we age, our bodies become more sensitive to even small changes, especially in the brain and blood vessels. Let me ask you this. Have you ever gotten out of bed quickly and felt a little dizzy, or like the room was swaying for a second? Maybe you chalked it up to aging, or thought, oh, I just need to move slower today. But what if that moment was your brain crying out for help? My name is Dr. Ariana. I'm a brain health specialist with over 15 years of experience working with older adults across the U.S. And in this video, I'm going to reveal one common morning habit that many seniors do, often without knowing, and how it silently increases your risk of stroke, heart strain, and even dangerous falls. Let's start with what actually happens inside your body in the first moments after waking up. You might be surprised by how fragile those minutes really are. The moment you wake up, your body doesn't simply switch on like a light. It goes through a delicate transition from deep rest to alert activity. And for people over 60, this transition isn't as smooth as it used to be. After 7 to 8 hours of sleep, your body is slightly dehydrated. Your blood becomes a little thicker, almost like syrup. Your heart is just starting to beat faster to get things moving again, and your blood pressure begins to rise as your system prepares for the day. Now, here's what many people don't realize. This period, right after waking, is one of the most vulnerable windows for your brain and your heart. In fact, research shows that a majority of strokes in older adults happen between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m. Why? Because your blood vessels are more sensitive during these hours. When you suddenly shift from lying flat to sitting or standing, your body has to work hard to keep blood flowing steadily to the brain. But as we age, our arteries may stiffen, and our heart doesn't respond quite as fast as it once did. So, if you jump up too quickly, there's a good chance your brain might not get enough blood in that moment. And even just a few seconds of low oxygen can trigger lightheadedness, a fall, or worse, a mini-stroke. This is especially risky if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, or a history of heart disease. But here's the challenge. Most people don't feel any warning signs. You wake up, get up, and go. But beneath the surface, your brain is under pressure. You may have heard of silent strokes, tiny events that don't cause obvious symptoms, but slowly damage the brain over time. Many of them happen in the early morning, without anyone noticing. That's why how you wake up and what you do in the first 10 minutes matters more than you think. Now that you understand what's happening inside your body first thing in the morning, let's talk about the specific morning mistake that silently triples your stroke risk. Now let's talk about the one habit that so many older adults do without thinking. Getting out of bed too quickly. I know, it seems harmless. You wake up, swing your legs over the side, and stand up like you've done every morning for decades. But what used to be simple in your 30s or 40s becomes risky after 60. You see, when you suddenly shift from lying to standing, your blood has to fight gravity to reach your brain. In a younger body, the blood vessels adjust quickly. But with age, our vessels become stiffer, and our heart's response slows down. The result? A sudden drop in blood pressure, known medically as orthostatic hypotension, a fancy term for when your brain doesn't get enough blood during position changes. That's when you feel dizzy, off balance, or like everything goes dim for a moment. And sometimes there are no symptoms at all, just a quiet strain on your brain that builds over time. What's worse? This quick action has been directly linked to increased stroke risk in older adults. In a large study from Japan, researchers followed adults over 65 and found that those who rose quickly in the morning without pausing had a stroke risk nearly 3 times higher than those who stood up more slowly. 3 times. Why? Because that sudden movement shocks the system. Your blood pressure spikes, your heart has to race to compensate, and your brain may be left gasping for oxygen during those first few seconds. Even more alarming, many strokes that occur from this type of morning strain are what doctors call silent strokes. You don't feel pain, you might not even know anything happened, but over time, these tiny repeated injuries can cause memory loss, balance problems, and even dementia. So while it may seem like a small thing, how fast you get up, it's actually one of the most overlooked risks for seniors when it comes to stroke prevention. If you've ever felt a wave of dizziness after standing up, or had to grab the bedpost for balance, please don't ignore it. This is your body's gentle warning. And the good news is, this risk is completely fixable with just a few simple changes. Up next, I'll explain exactly how this morning habit affects your brain and why it raises your stroke risk more than you might imagine. So why does something as simple as standing up too quickly pose such a serious danger? It all comes down to blood flow to the brain and how easily it can be disrupted as we age. When you're lying down, gravity isn't pulling your blood downward, but the moment you sit up or stand, your blood naturally drops toward your legs. Your heart and blood vessels must react immediately, tightening and pumping harder to push blood back up to your brain. But here's the problem. After age 60, our blood vessels become less elastic. They don't tighten as quickly, and the heart may not respond fast enough to sudden changes. As a result, there's a brief moment, just seconds, when your brain may not get the oxygen it needs. And when that happens, repeatedly, day after day, it can take a toll. Now imagine if your arteries are already narrowed by cholesterol, or if you have high blood pressure or diabetes. The brain is even more vulnerable. This is when the risk of ischemic stroke, the most common type, rises sharply. An ischemic stroke happens when a clot blocks blood flow to the brain. If your blood pressure suddenly spikes or your vessels become unstable from a lack of oxygen, small clots can form. If just one of those clots reaches a narrow artery in your brain, it's enough to trigger a life-altering event. And it doesn't always start with dramatic symptoms. It may begin with what doctors call a mini-stroke or TIA, a brief blockage that clears up on its own. But here's the scary part. 1 in 5 people who have a TIA will have a major stroke within just 90 days, and the risk is highest in the first 48 hours. That's why those early signs, like dizziness or confusion upon standing, must never be ignored. The American Heart Association has warned that sudden changes in blood pressure, especially first thing in the morning, are a leading cause of both TIA and full stroke in older adults. The good news? This isn't something you're powerless against. Just like we take time to warm up our joints before exercise, your circulation system needs time to adjust each morning too. In the next section, I'll show you the warning signs to watch for during those first few minutes after waking, because your brain often whispers for help long before a stroke ever happens. Many strokes don't come out of the blue. They come with quiet warnings, especially in the morning. But because these signs often feel mild or brief, many older adults brush them off, thinking it's just old age or that they simply had a poor night's sleep. I want to help you recognize what your body may be trying to tell you. Let's talk about some morning red flags that should never be ignored. 1. Dizziness or lightheadedness when standing up. If the room feels like it's spinning, or you need to hold onto the bed or wall just to stay steady, that's not normal. It's a sign that your brain isn't getting enough oxygen in those first moments of the day. 2. Blurry vision or brief dimming of eyesight. Even if it only lasts a few seconds, this may be a sign of reduced blood flow to the visual centers in your brain. 3. Feeling confused or not quite right. If you wake up and have trouble recalling what day it is, or you walk into the kitchen and forget what you were doing, these moments might be more than just forgetfulness. They could be early signs of a mini-stroke or low oxygen levels. 4. weakness, or numbness on one side. Even if it fades quickly, a strange feeling in one arm or leg, especially just after waking, deserves attention. It may be a sign that part of your brain was affected, even briefly. 5. Heart racing or pounding unusually fast. Your heart may be struggling to stabilize your blood pressure. This puts stress on the blood vessels in your brain and increases the risk of clots forming. I know many of these signs are easy to dismiss. You might think, "I'm just tired," or "that happens sometimes." But a moment of hesitation in the morning can be your body's way of saying, "Slow down, I need help." If you experience these symptoms regularly, write them down. Talk to your doctor. And above all, be kind to yourself in the morning. Because the earlier you catch these signs, the more likely you are to prevent a stroke before it ever happens. Next, let me show you 3 small habits that can make your morning safer and protect your brain for years to come. So now that you know how vulnerable the brain is in the first few minutes after waking, let's talk about what you can do, starting tomorrow morning, to protect yourself. The good news is that you don't need expensive medicine or complicated routines. Just 3 simple steps done in the right order can make a world of difference. Step 1. Pause and breathe. Before moving, when you first open your eyes, don't rush. Give your body about 60 seconds to adjust. Take a few deep, slow breaths. Wiggle your fingers and toes. Gently rotate your ankles and wrists while still lying down. This tiny warm-up tells your heart and blood vessels, we're waking up slowly, safely. It also helps prevent the sudden blood pressure drop that can lead to dizziness or fainting. Step 2. Sit up slowly, then wait. 30 seconds after breathing and stretching, gently roll to your side and push yourself up to a seated position. Let your feet dangle over the edge of the bed. Stay there for about 30 seconds. This gives your circulation time to stabilize. You may be surprised how much more steady and clear-headed you feel just from this short pause. If you tend to feel wobbly, keep a sturdy chair or handrail nearby for support when standing. Step 3. Drink a full glass of room temperature water. Before your coffee, before your breakfast, drink water. After a long night's sleep, your body is mildly dehydrated. That makes your blood thicker and harder to circulate. It puts pressure on the heart, and it starves your brain of oxygen. Drinking a glass of water, ideally placed by your bedside the night before, helps wake up your system gently. It restores fluid balance, improves blood flow, and lowers the chance of clotting. If you want to go a step further, try adding a slice of lemon or a pinch of sea salt for electrolytes, but plain, clean water is enough. These 3 habits may seem small, but I've seen them change lives. I once had a patient, Mr. Lewis, 72 years old. He used to jump out of bed every morning and had no idea why he always felt dizzy. After adopting this slow start routine, not only did his symptoms disappear, but his blood pressure became more stable throughout the day. So tomorrow morning, give yourself the gift of a softer start. It takes less than 3 minutes. But those 3 minutes could be the most powerful thing you do all day to protect your heart and brain. Next, I'd like to leave you with a gentle reminder and a few words from the heart. If there's one thing I've learned in over 15 years of helping older adults protect their brain health, it's this. Prevention begins in the smallest moments, especially those first quiet minutes after we wake up. Your brain is an incredible organ. It remembers your children's laughter. It holds your life stories, your favorite songs, your prayers, and your dreams. And it deserves a gentle beginning each morning. So if you take one thing from this video, let it be this. Never rush your mornings. Never ignore your body's quiet warnings. And never believe it's just old age when something feels off. What you do in the first few minutes of your day may be the difference between a life of independence and a life changed by stroke. And here's the beauty. You have the power to make that difference right now. Not with pills or fancy machines, but with presence, patience, and a bit of water by your bedside. If this message spoke to you, I encourage you to share it with someone you love. Because a simple reminder like this could truly save a life. And if you'd like more videos just like this, gentle guidance, heartfelt health advice, and habits made for those of us over 60, I'd love for you to join our community here on Elderly Whisper. Together, we'll keep listening to what the body says and keep honoring this season of life with wisdom, care, and strength. I'm Dr. Ariana, and I'm grateful you spent these minutes with me. Take good care starting tomorrow morning.